Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Suchat, or Pra Ajahn Suchat Abhijato, who has given me the very special honor of being asked by him to record this book for you. This book was written by Pra Ajahn Suchat's own teacher, the Venerable Acariya Maha Boowa Nanasampanno, and is a spiritual biography written by him about his teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Buddhadatta Thera. The title of the book is Venerable Acariya Mun Buddhadatta Thera, a spiritual biography by Acariya Mahabhuwa Nanasampanno, and it was published in 2005, translated into English by Bhikkhu Dick Silaratano. If you would like to learn how to download or get a hard copy of this book, or a list of which pages or chapters are read on each separate recording, please listen to the beginning of the first recording of this book. This book, in any form, is to be given away for free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with, for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, as I'm still learning how to pronounce Thai and Pali, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We're continuing today on page 154 at the beginning of the very last paragraph on that page, on page 154. We're still in chapter 3. At the moment he set off alone, his cheetah began to express the dynamic characteristics of a daring, thoroughbred stallion. It wanted to soar high and glide through the air, dive underground, and then shoot up into the sky again. It felt inclined to venture out, to experience the many countless variety of phenomena in the universe. He felt as if his cheetah was about to dig up and remove all of the kilesas in a single instant. The adventurous nature of his mindfulness and wisdom had long been hemmed in by social obligations. They were unable to move freely about in their preferred domain. The observation and analysis of just those things Acariya Mun had wanted to know about for such a long time. Now he was blessed with the opportunity of leaping away and vanishing, finally able to give mindfulness and wisdom the chance to display their considerable prowess as they explored throughout the three worlds of existence. Acariya Mun investigated thoroughly, internally and externally. His mindfulness and wisdom penetrated all around, constantly moving in and out, up and down, all the while resolving issues, detaching himself, and then letting go as he cut, slashed, and pulverized every manner of falsehood with all the strength he could muster. Feeling unbound as a giant fish swimming happily in the ocean, he looked back on his entire past and saw only dark, obstructive times lurking there, fraught with all kinds of dangerous, inevitable consequences. His heart beat faster at the prospect of finding a way to save himself. Looking to the future, he saw before him only a majestic, empty expanse of brilliant illumination, a view that completely surpasses any conventional understanding and is utterly beyond all description. So much so that I find it difficult to elaborate any further for the benefit of the reader. I sincerely regret that I am unable to do justice to all the inspiring things Acariya Mun said. Acariya Mun sat in meditation late that night, not too long after supreme mindfulness and supreme wisdom had reached the peak of their performance. Like a wheel of Dhamma, they moved in unison as they rotated non-stop around the cheetah and everything related to it. He was residing at the base of a mountain in a broad open area covered with enormous flat rocks. Clear open space surrounded him as he sat at the foot of a solitary tree. the only tree in that entire area. This tree had abundant cool shade during the day, so he sometimes went to meditate under it. I regret that I cannot recall what type of tree it was or its exact location. As Acariya Mun described this amazing event, I was so thoroughly overwhelmed by the magnitude of his achievement that I failed to remember any of the pertinent details, what district and township he was in, or even the name of the mountain range. Hearing him talk of his great victory, I couldn't help thinking about myself. Was I going to simply waste my birth as a human being, carelessly throwing away the wonderful opportunity it gave me? Did I have enough spiritual potential to one day succeed in realizing that same supreme Dhamma? Reflecting in this manner, I forgot everything else. I had no idea that someday I would be writing his biography. At dusk, Acariya Mun began walking meditation, focusing on Paticca Samuppada as the theme of primary relevance to this level of contemplation. Starting with Avijja Paccaya Sankhara, he became so intrigued by the subject of dependent origination that he was soon investigating it to the exclusion of all else. By the time he sat down at about 9 o'clock, his mind was concentrated solely on scrutinizing avijja, examining each of the interdependent conditions through to the logical conclusion, then reversing the order to arrive back at avijja. Contemplating thus, he deliberated back and forth, over and over, inside the citta, the focal point where birth, death, and kilesas converge with the principal cause, avijja. Seated in meditation late that night, the crucial moment had arrived. The battle lines were drawn. Supreme mindfulness and supreme wisdom, the razor-sharp weapons, against avijja, an enemy especially adroit at repulsing their advances, then counterattacking, leaving its opponents in total disarray. Since time immemorial, no one has dared to challenge its might, allowing avijja to reign supreme and opposed over the kingdom of birth and death inside the hearts of all living beings. But at 3 a.m. that night, when Acariya Mun launched his final all-out assault, the result was the total destruction of the king's mighty throne and the complete overthrow of his reign in the kingdom of birth and death. Suddenly impotent and deprived of room to maneuver, the king could not maintain his sovereignty. At that moment, avijja perished, victim to a lightning strike of magnificent brilliance. Acariya Mun described how that fateful moment was accompanied by a tremor that appeared to shake the entire universe. Celestial beings throughout this vast expanse immediately paid tribute to his supreme accomplishment, roaring an exclamation of approval that reverberated across the sentient universe and proclaimed the appearance of another disciple of the Tathagata in the world. Overjoyed to have witnessed this event, they were eager to offer their congratulations. Human beings, however, were unaware of the momentous event that had just taken place. Occupied with worldly pleasures, they were too oblivious to care that only a moment before the supreme Dhamma had arisen in the heart of a fellow human being. When the awesome moment passed, what remained was Visuddhi Dhamma. This pure Dhamma, the true natural state of the citta, suffused Acariya Mun's body and mind and extended its light in all directions. The experience aroused an indescribable feeling of great awe and wonder. His customary compassion for the world virtually disappeared, and with it, his interest in teaching other people. He was convinced that this supreme Dhamma was far too profound and overwhelming in its greatness for people to ever truly understand. So he became disheartened in this respect, feeling disinclined to teach others. He felt it was enough to simply enjoy this wonderful Dhamma alone, while still living in the midst of the conventional world. Acariya Mun reflected at length that night on the beneficence of the Lord Buddha. This supreme teacher, having fully realized the truth, taught people who were receptive to his message so that they too could attain genuine deliverance. It was obvious that not a single falsehood was concealed anywhere within the Buddha's teaching. He spent the rest of that night tirelessly paying homage to the supreme virtues of the Lord Buddha. Acariya Mun had always been compassionate. He was deeply sympathetic to the spiritual state of fellow human beings. But his citta had just attained a clarity that was so extraordinary in its brilliance and purity that he felt he could not possibly explain the true nature of this Dhamma to others. Even if he tried, ordinary people with kilesas could never hope to attain this exalted state of mind. More than that, hearing him speak in such superlatives, they could accuse him of insanity for daring to teach the world something that no good, sane person would ever discuss. He believed it unlikely that there would be enough sympathetic people to generate his enthusiasm for teaching. He was free to live a life of solitude for the remainder of his years. It was sufficient that he had fully realized his lifelong ambition. He saw no reason to burden himself with difficult teaching responsibilities. It could end up being an example of good causes with bad effects. That is, his compassionate intentions could well turn into harmful results for contemptuous people. Such was Acariya Mun's frame of mind shortly after attaining the Supreme Dhamma, a time when he had yet to focus on the wider picture. Eventually, his thoughts gathered on the Lord Buddha's guiding role in revealing the correct path of practice. Reviewing his attainment of Dhamma and the path he took, he saw that he too was a human being in the world just like everyone else, and undistinguished from others by any special characteristic that would make him the only person capable of understanding this Dhamma. Certainly, others with strong spiritual tendencies were capable of this understanding. By failing to broaden his perspective, his initial outlook had tended to disparage the spiritual tendencies of his fellow human beings, which was unfair. The Lord Buddha did not reveal the path of practice leading to Magga, Phala, and Nibbana for the benefit of only one individual. This revelation was a gift for the whole world, both his contemporaries and succeeding generations. In total, the number of those who have reached Magga, Phala, and Nibbana following the Buddha's teaching is enormous, beyond reckoning. In this respect, Acariya Mun's achievement was definitely not unique, though he initially overlooked the capacity of others for similar achievement. Carefully reviewing all aspects of the Buddha's teaching, he saw its relevance for people the world over, and its accessibility to anyone willing to practice correctly. These thoughts gave him a renewed desire to help others. Once again, he felt comfortable with the idea of teaching people who came to him for guidance, provided they were receptive to his instructions. For in teaching Dhamma, the teacher has an obligation to treat Dhamma with respect by refusing to instruct anyone who is disrespectful or indifferent to what is being taught. Some people can't help making noises while listening to Dhamma. They are obviously apathetic to the value of the Dhamma and the opportunity they have for hearing it. They appear oblivious to where they are or how they are expected to behave at that time. Such people see Dhamma as something quite ordinary. They have adopted a typically worldly attitude of being thoroughly indifferent to Dhamma, to the monastery, and to the monks. They see the whole lot as just commonplace. Under such circumstances, it is unconscionable to teach Dhamma. The teacher is then censorable, and the audience fails to gain any real benefit. Before he realized the supreme Dhamma and then made it available to others, Acariya Mun nearly gave up his life in the forests and mountains as he struggled relentlessly with every ounce of strength. After such heroic effort, The notion of bringing this precious Dhamma and having it simply dissipate in the ocean was inconceivable. When has that ever happened? After all, a monk is the type of person who considers everything scrupulously before he acts. Dhamma exists in a class by itself, so special attention must be paid to when and how it is presented to a public audience. Should these considerations be neglected in the presentation of Dhamma, the outcome might well prove harmful. Dhamma is taught for the purpose of helping people in the world, much like a doctor desiring the well-being of his patients prescribes medications to cure sickness and relieve pain. But when people are unwilling to accept help, why should a monk worry about teaching them? If he really has true Dhamma in his heart, he is perfectly content to live in solitude. It's unnecessary for him to seek students in order to alleviate the discomfort and stress caused by an irrepressible urge to teach others the way, an urge which merely adds to a person's sense of discontent anyway. Lacking sincerity in the Dhamma that the Lord Buddha strove so earnestly to realize, such a person, though he calls himself a teacher, is one only in name. Acariya Mun said he had complete confidence that he was mentally and physically attuned to living alone because his heart was supremely tranquil, possessing genuine Dhamma. Dhamma means tranquility. A heart filled with Dhamma is a heart whose serenity transcends everything. Acariya Mun naturally preferred living in forested mountain areas since these places were conducive to dwelling sublimely with Dhamma. He considered teaching others to be a special situation. It was an obligation he performed occasionally, and not an actual necessity, as was living by Dhamma, an essential aspect of his life to the very end. Otherwise, he would not have enjoyed a convenient daily existence. When we possess Dhamma, understand Dhamma, and abide in Dhamma, we are unperturbed by things in the world, and so do not go searching for dukkha. Where Dhamma abides, there is happiness and tranquility. According to natural principles, Dhamma abides in the hearts of those who practice it, so happiness and tranquility arise in the hearts of those practitioners. It cannot arise in any other place. Acariya Mun was always extremely circumspect when teaching Dhamma. He never taught indiscriminately, for Dhamma itself is never indiscriminate. He never practiced Dhamma in a random fashion, but always followed well-established principles, practicing within the confines of the noble tradition recorded in the Buddhist scriptures. Understanding did not arise in him in a random fashion either. It arose in progressive stages, following the principles of truth. Acariya Mun advised practicing monks to guard against being indiscriminate by always keeping the strictures of the teaching and the discipline in mind, since they represent the Buddha and the path of practice he followed. He stressed that the monk who maintains Magga and Phala and maintains the teaching and the discipline is one who is humble and unassuming, and always careful not to let his actions, his speech, or his thoughts go astray. Practicing thus, he will be able to stand on his own indefinitely. Having addressed the issue of teaching Dhamma to others, Acariya Mun again turned his attention to the nature of his inner Dhamma. He said that the moment of realization, when Dhamma arises in all its glory within the citta, is a moment that's completely unimaginable. Dhamma's true nature reveals itself in a totally unexpected manner, as it is inconceivable and impossible to speculate about beforehand. At that moment, he felt as though he had died and been born again into a new life, a uniquely amazing death and rebirth. The quality of awareness intrinsic to this transformation was a state of knowing that he had never before experienced, even though it had always been there, unchanging. Suddenly, then, it became apparent, spectacular, and inconceivably amazing. It was this quintessential quality that caused Acariya Mun to consider, somewhat unconventionally, that it would not be possible to teach others this Dhamma because they would never be able to truly understand it. Since his early days of practice, Acariya Mun always possessed a very dynamic character. That distinguishing characteristic was evident at the moment of his final attainment, which was so unforgettable for him that he would later tell this story to inspire his disciples. Once his citta had completely overthrown the cycle of repeated birth and death, it appeared to make 3 revolutions, circling around the newly arisen Vivata citta. Upon conclusion of the first revolution, the Pali term lopo, cutting off, arose together with its essential meaning. At that moment the citta had completed the function of totally excluding all vestiges of relative conventional reality. Upon conclusion of the second revolution, the Pali term vimutti, absolute freedom, arose together with its essential meaning. At that moment, the citta had completed the function of attaining total release. Upon conclusion of the third revolution, the Pali term analayo, total detachment, arose together with its essential meaning. At that moment, the citta had completed the function of wholly severing all attachments. Citta and Dhamma were the one and the same, eka citta, eka Dhamma. The true nature of the citta is synonymous with the true nature of Dhamma. Unlike relative conventional reality, there is no duality. This is Vimutti Dhamma, pure and simple. It is absolute in its singularity and devoid of any trace of relative conventional reality within. This pure Dhamma is fully realized only once. It never requires further perfection. And we're going to end there today on page 161. We'll resume in the next recording at the first full paragraph on that same page, on page 161. We are in chapter 3. Have a wonderful day. Until next time, with metta. Bye-bye.